Hey everybody, it's Troy, and today we're going to be doing a lecture on network hardening. And network hardening is also another term for network security. So, network hardening, on a very basic level, is making it difficult for a malicious actor to gain unauthorized access into your network. Now, there's tons of different ways that you can do this, and you can spend tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars getting there. So we're going to also talk a little bit about, cost benefit and what levels of security you might need in different situations. But before we do that, we need to talk about the CIA triangle. Now, I'm sure you've heard of it. If you haven't, I'm going to tell you what it is. CIA triangle is the focal point of everything that you do inside your network. If you if you update applications, if you update software, if you replace hardware, you update firmware, all of that has to be thought about in with the perspective of the CIA triangle. So CIA stands for confidentiality, integrity, and accessibility. So the data needs to remain confidential. Integrity means that you haven't, that the data has been kept exactly how it's supposed to be. No one has altered it in an unauthorized manner. And then accessibility means that whoever needs access to that data can get the data. So you don't want to do anything that will mess with any of these three things. You can't pick one and say, this is my most important. All three are important. It's a triangle. Every one of those angles is important to the triangle. If you didn't have them, it wouldn't work. So in your network, your data, which is what you're ultimately attempting to secure, right? I mean, when you bottom line everything out, data is what you are trying to make sure that malicious actors don't get a hold of. And so there's three states of data, okay? You have data at rest, you have data in use, you have data in motion. Data at rest, exactly what it sounds like. It's not being used, it's not being moved, it's being stored. Might be in, let's see, it might be in a database, it might be on your hard drive. Okay, that's data at rest. Data in use is exactly what you would think. It's when someone is using that data. And data in motion is when the data is traveling. Uh, Now, traveling, there are two different um, ways data can travel. The first is what we call east to west. That's internal traffic. So on inside your internal network, you are sending a spreadsheet to Joe in accounting. You put it up on the accounting network share. He goes up and he gets it. So the data was in motion when it went from your machine to the share. Then it was at rest, and then it became in motion again when Joe downloaded it from the share to his machine, and then it stopped and it became in use. Okay. Now north south is the other type of traveling, which is external. Okay, from your internal network out into the big bad world through the interwebs, off it goes. Anything that comes from outside and inside, that's north south traffic. All right, so you need to understand how data travels and the states that data is in order for you to protect that kind of data. All right, so network hardening has uh, several different components to it. And I think the easiest way to do it is a slide presentation that I've already put together. And we can go ahead and take a look at this. All right. So this is why security matters. Okay. Security matters because we are having an unprecedented amount or number of incidents and events. So, just to give you an idea, now these are from the Verizon. Verizon puts out a report annually, and they really go through in detail all of the incidents that have happened, and they get it's really a good resource. I use it all the time. I used it all the time in my master's program, um, and I continue to use it. So it's important. So you can see in 2018 we had 53,308 incidences. Okay, now an incident is um, when uh, some type of breach was attempted. It may have worked, it may not have worked. There's also things called events, and events, depending on who you talk to, an event is different than an incident. Um, so it just depends on who you talk to. I put some definitions down here for you so you can see. An incident we're defining in these purposes a security event that compromises integrity, confidentiality, availability of an information asset. And a breach, an incident that results in the confirmed disclosure, not just potential exposure, of data to an unauthorized party. So an incident doesn't necessarily mean that data was compromised. Okay? They may have attempted it, and your system may have shut them down. And that's good. That's what it's meant to do. On the other hand, a breach, that's when a forensic team investigates and finds out that, yes, indeed, people's data was compromised and either downloaded or whatever they do with it, the bad guys. It's not just the potential, it actually happened. And those are two different things. You'll learn about that more in forensics if you take that. But so there's 53,308 incidents, 2,216 breaches. 2019, we dropped in the incidents and in the number of breaches. My guess, and it's just a guess, 2020 we'll see our numbers go up quite a bit. And the reason I say that is that when COVID-19 really started to heat up in this country, February, March, and universities sent students home and companies sent workers home for people to work from home, that opened up a completely new attack vector or attack plane for bad guys. Now you had people from home VPNing into their network and working. So now the bad guy didn't necessarily have to go to the big network. He could try to get into a home user's network, which may not be nearly as secure. So my guess is you're going to be seeing those numbers rise because of the COVID-19 and the way we've changed how we work. All right. So this is kind of cool. This is kind of cool diagram, pictorial type thing. So hacking over time has evolved. The hacks have gotten more sophisticated, as you would expect, and the attacks and ways that they perpetrate these attacks have gotten uh, more sophisticated as well. So as you can see here, in 2018 versus 2013. In 2013, more people were actually hacking than they were in 2018, meaning they were doing something directly to a system to attempt um, to breach it somehow. If you watch a movie on TV, the people that sit down and in 3 minutes they're deep inside the CIA's computers, which of course we know is not going to happen, but they're there anyway. Um, so it dropped by 3%. Which malware is a huge umbrella. Malware covers everything that is malicious software. That could be a virus, a worm, Trojan, ransomware, keyloggers, bloatware, adware, um, any of that kind of stuff. Okay. Uh, I mean, there's just a ton of them now. So social. Now we're talking about social engineering here. All right. It increased by 18%. All right. Error, which that's just somebody screws something up and uh, and your hackers get in. That went up by 5%, and they don't give reasons for this. My bet is this differential you see right here is due to cloud computing, because so many people switched to the cloud between 2013 and 2018, and they didn't set up their security properly, and that's probably where this comes in. Misuse, so that's probably more along the lines of insider stuff. And then physical, that's where someone actually comes in and steals something, or they come in and they impersonate someone, or uh, they steal a badge and get in, whatever it is. So over here in 2013, you saw they were going after servers pretty hard, and that's dropped off a little bit. Um, User development, going after a person, going after media, going after a kiosk, going after a network. So it kind of shows you a little bit about the different things that are happening. The most interesting thing to me is that the evolution the hackers have gone through is they've gone away from attempting to hit the network directly to going after individual people, which is right here. That increased by 20%. All right. And when I say individual people, I'm not talking about you at home, although that could be it. I'm talking more along the lines of uh, a social engineering with like a phishing email, a vishing email, uh, whaling, spear phishing, all that kind of stuff. Okay. Malware. Remember, malware is that's that's that big umbrella that covers any type of malicious software. So, the delivery method for malware, 94% of the time, it comes through email. Okay? Now, I know this web, these two numbers don't add up, but web can also mean that they include email clients that could be web based. So, just take that in mind. The file types that they send to you in these emails, okay? So, would be Office documents. You would have Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Access, all of those. they are they're huge when it comes to um, the getting you to do stuff that's stupid. Um, Mainly because they allow uh, programming on the back end and like macros and stuff, and that's an easy way to get you. Uh, Windows applications, the Windows app itself, I mean, and then other would include like PDFs or um, PNGs, JPEGs, all that stuff. And it's important to understand that because you can send someone a picture and the picture can have malware inside of it. And if the person clicks on the picture, that malware can be a Trojan horse and it can download without you ever knowing what just happened. Okay? That's called steganography when they put a picture, when they take a picture or and then they obfuscate their malicious software behind the picture. Um, and it's kind of fun to do that. If you have Audacity, which is a recording software, it's what I record music when I play it. Um, you can actually take a picture and run it through Audacity to get wavelengths, and you can find a hidden message in it. You can take like a song or a radio message, and you can also hide malware in there, and you can find that too. So it's kind of cool. But this is important. Email, 94%. Okay? That means people are falling for phishing. That means that the training that we use for phishing doesn't work. And I'll show you why. So, breaches. Phishing, that's a little over 80%, probably about 85%. Pretexting, that's pretending to be someone that you're not, about 20% of the time. Guy shows up at your office door dressed like an air conditioner guy, and he's not, that's pretexting. Somebody calls you on the phone, and they say they're from Microsoft, and your OS is out of date, that's pretexting. Bribery, obviously, I mean, that's a that's a way to get someone to do something for you or to look the other way while you do something in exchange for usually money. Extortion. Extortion is when you, as the malicious actor, approach someone and say to them, listen, I have information about you, and if you don't do what we say, then we're going to make sure that we release this information to fill in the blank, whoever's going to be most hurt by it. And usually they want money. I saw this a lot in the last couple of years in the form of emails and in the form of what they call sextortion emails. What they were doing is they had planted malware on some websites that were just normal websites, and they would capture your email address and then capture the password that you put in for that site, and then they would email you at work and say, "Hey, we have your email. Here it is. To show you that we're not kidding. Here's your password." And so then people freak out, and it says they've caught you looking at pornographic sites, and they've enabled your webcam, and they're going to release this video to everybody. You need to pay them or send them Bitcoin to a Bitcoin wallet and stuff like that. So, and I have a copy of an actual email that came into our company, and we'll look at that in a little bit. Forgery, obviously, that is generally that refers to signing a name that is not your own. and representing that document as legitimate. Influence, again, that's in order to have influence, you need some sort of power or perceived power over the person you're attempting to influence. All right. So we talk about like influencers on social media, right? Those are the people that have all the followers. And if they use a certain product, I don't care what it is, those followers are so loyal, they'll start using it themselves. So influence doesn't always, connotate negativity or a negative relationship, but undue influence, which would be, your boss coming to you saying, "Hey, listen, I need you to take this USB with you when you leave today, and then meet me in the parking lot, and you can give it to me out there." Right? So your boss is using influence on you. He hasn't bribed you or threatened you, but because he's your boss, it makes it difficult to say no. And then you have other, and then I'm not sure how they define scam. I mean, it seems like all of these are a scam, but anyway. All right. So here are some of the other ones. So you have privilege abuse, data mishandling, unapproved workaround, knowledge abuse, email misuse, possession, unapproved hardware, financial espionage for fun. Let's look at the big one. So privilege abuse, that's a big one. And privilege abuse is exactly what you think it is. And privilege abuse is when you have privileges in your network and you use them for nefarious means. In other words, you have, say, you're an IT admin, uh, you're going to have, reign over almost the entire network, and you get into the accounting to see how much the CEO is making, right? Because you're going to renegotiate your contract. You want to see how much people are making. That's an abuse of privilege. And by the way, that doing that is the worst possible thing you could ever do. Because once you see how much other people make, you can never forget it, and you'll just be pissed off all the time. All right. Along with this, I would also say escalation of privilege. So if someone can uh, get into the system and they can get a hold of credentials and use them, that would be privilege abuse. Or if they have a way to get to a root user, so I'm using a Linux term there, which I don't normally do, but if they can get to the root user and they can gain access through that, then they've escalated their privilege and now they're going to abuse that. Data mishandling, this is kind of under the mistakes or errors. We're seeing this a lot in cloud computing right now. Year and a half ago, Capital One was breached. They say that nobody got anything important, but I mean, who knows? But what happened was that they had gone to AWS, the Amazon Web Service, and started to put their stuff with Amazon. And somebody created an S3 bucket. And if you don't know what that is, you can look it up. But what they didn't realize is that when you create an S3 bucket on Amazon, it is inherently unsecured. It's not secured until you run it through their IAM or IAM uh, uh, protocols that Amazon came up with. So that's data mishandling. They left this S3 bucket unsecured. A former AWS engineer was poking around and found that S3 bucket. The reason and she did the hack. And the reason that she was able to find it is she knew what she was looking for. So that's data mishandling because she didn't work for the company anymore. Unapproved workaround. In the IT industry, you will see workarounds, and a workaround is simply um, we can't figure out a way to actually fix the problem, so we're going to find a way around the problem. Sometimes that's the best that you can do because a problem may require so much effort that it's not worth it for the benefit you get if you do solve it. However, if you are going to do a workaround, you need to make sure that number one, supervisors sign off on it, and number two, that you make sure that that workaround doesn't open up a new security flaw. Knowledge abuse. Okay, so again, the lady who hacked Microsoft or not Capital One through AWS, she had that knowledge and she abused it. And then, of course, you can see the others, which makes sense. Um, and then, for they do a lot of people do them for financial gain, which they can sell your data, or if it's an internal attack, they might be stealing data or stealing money. Um, Fraud is a huge deal, and that's all being perpetrated now electronically. Espionage. So espionage, that's you're talking about when one um, government entity is spying on another government entity. Okay, and we're seeing that a lot. I mean, remember in the elections 4 years ago, they're still talking about and trying to figure out the tie-in between Russia and the United States and voting and computer hacks. And we know that the Chinese have attacked us. We know that Israel uh, has attacked Iran. We did some stuff with Iran. Um, that's espionage. Okay. Now, sorry about that. I still got my allergies. So there's also a thing that is corporate espionage. And corporate espionage is exactly what you think. When you have two really big competitors, uh, Azure and AWS, they're competitors. They each have competitive advantages and they have proprietary data and information. Corporate espionage, the goal is to get a hold of that proprietary information and use it to get a leg up on your competition in the market. Some people do it for fun, and I think that's probably more of it than what you see right here. Fun is just the kid that's down in his mom's basement. He's screwing around. And he finds some website that he can get into. He's just messing around. He's just goofing off for fun. Or like you guys all probably, I'm sure you don't do this, but um, hack into Wi-Fi passwords or hack into your neighbor's Wi-Fi where it's at because you learned how to do it in class. Uh, so that's fun, right? That's what they're considering fun. Grudge, obviously, you know that makes sense. Now, here's another interesting piece. When you harden a network, you have to really consider what you're looking at right here. So let me tell you what this is. Compromise to correction. So what we're doing in this slide is we're comparing um, how fast a compromise happened. So they broke into your system, and then how fast they got out of your system, exfiltration, compared to what you do, which is discover it and then contain it. So this is the part that gets really interesting. The compromise, so if you look at this as a bell curve, right? And it's not quite bell, but close enough. Right here, that is that's the highest. And it's in minutes. It doesn't say how many minutes, but it's in minutes, and you have hours over here. Okay? So we know that I think it's 68% of all of the data will fall in these spaces right here, which are the I just forgot the name. Never mind. Anyway, so compromise takes minutes. Exfiltration, okay? How fast do they get out? Well, looks like probably 38, 39% of attacks are out in minutes. Another 20% are out in hours. And then that's probably, yeah, hours. And then about the same, maybe a little bit less in days. And then you see it going down. All right. The majority of these attacks, the guys are out of your system within minutes. Here's where it gets really interesting. How long before most networks discover they've been attacked? Well, let's look over here. 40%, it takes them months to discover that they've had a breach. Months, more than one. These guys are in and out in minutes, and we don't discover it for months. All right? And then once we discover it, how long does it take us to contain it? Contain it meaning we destroy it, we isolate it, we uh, we find a way to quarantine it, whatever it is. Majority of the time, so 40%. Well, that's not the majority. Well, I guess it is here. 40% of the time, it takes us days to figure out a way to contain something, and containing being stopping the damage. And then if you come over to here, we're at what, maybe 25%. It takes weeks. And then maybe 5%, 10% takes months. So think about that when you look at these graphs. It's crazy to think that the malicious actors get in and get out within minutes, but it takes us months and then days and weeks to discover it and fix it. That's where the bad guys are winning right now. And the truth is, they're always going to have the upper hand on us. The reason they have the upper hand is that they don't have to play by the same rules that we do. They will continually attempt different attacks until they find one that works. Whereas if you're a software development company, you just can't create an app and then send it out with all sorts of bugs and flaws and it doesn't work and then expect people to pay you, because they won't. So we have to go through quality testing. We have to make sure that we're in compliance with all the different regulations there are. These guys, these malicious actors, they don't have to do any of that. They get something off the dark web. Hey, here's a hack that works. Just replace these few lines in this command line. This one attacks PowerShell. You can use PowerShell. This one you can use in Bash. This is for cross-site scripting. This one is for SQL SQL injection, database injection, whatever. So they're always going to have the upper hand because they're playing offense and we're playing defense. So while they do have the upper hand, there are ways to compensate for this. So if we take a look at this, here's your attack success percentages, the number of steps it takes in order to be successful. And it shows attack success by chain length in simulated incidents. Okay. So interestingly enough, right here, just under 75% took them maybe one step and then 2 steps. But you see all these up here, 5 steps being the most that it took. 5 steps right here, which is not very many. You're probably at 80%. And then even before you get to 10 steps, so right at 10, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 out of 10, 11, 12, 13. 9 out of 13 attacks took 10 or less steps to get in. That's why they can get in minutes. That's not very many. Um, so if we take a look at this, um, these lines show like the blue is an error, this is malware, this is a physical attack, this is unknown, hacking, misuse, social, and then you see they give you availability, confidentiality, integrity, and then over here, here's the integrity part and what gets compromised when the integrity gets compromised, and down you go. Remember, it's your CIA triangle. I know this is kind of hard to read, but it shows a relationship between what's happening and what it's doing to all of these at the same time. Okay? And if you look, the vast majority of attacks as it goes out here are messing with the integrity of your data. And you remember what I said at the beginning, if the data is breached, even if they don't take anything, now the integrity has been damaged because you don't know if they made any changes. You have millions and millions of lines of data in these databases. It would be very difficult for you to find a way unless unless you did run a hash like right before they attacked you and then nobody added anything to it, and then you ran a second hash and they don't match. But the chances of you being able to do that are probably zero because they get in minutes, get out in minutes, and you don't discover it for months. So chances are um, you're not gonna know what happened. All right. Now it's interesting. This one's a little bit easier to read. So if you look at this, okay, so right here, we see this line, this orange line, that's malware. So this is where malware actually got placed into a system, and then it turns green, like you see here, because of hacking. So an attack can actually go through multiple iterations or multiple steps of, so we sent malware in and the people, you know, downloaded something or they went to a bad website, got us in, and then the hacking starts. Cross-site scripting, uh, you name it. So, real quick, um, the delivery method, and these are for different, whoops, these are different industries, okay? And then if you look over here, down here it says email and then web, all right? So in retail and wholesale, you have 95%, actually all the way down. Everybody's in the 90s except education for uh, getting their malware through email. And then here's their web, and you see education's way up on this. The other thing they take into consideration here is you might get an email and then click on a link and go to the web, and that's where you get your malware at. File type, Office Doc, Windows app, or other. You see, Office Doc really rules the roost in these numbers. Just a little trivia: the only file type that is safe to open is a .txt, a text file. That's the only document that people can't put some type of malware into for you to get tricked into. Everything else they can get you. So, question becomes, what are you going to secure? And this is something that we answer in our security checklist. But you need to do your physical premise, your network assets, your employees, your data, transmissions, and email. That's what you're going to protect. So physical security, it's exactly what you might think and more. You restrict the access to your office/building. You can do that through proximity cards. You can do that through keypads. You can do that through biometrics. Just depends on how much money you have and what you want to do. Restricted access to where your network assets are stored. That's like a server room. Again, but access here and access here are going to be completely different. All right. Some people that have access to this will also have access here. But not everyone here will have access to this. All right. So that's where you're assigning people privileges based on what they do. Then you want security cameras. You probably want some kind of camera that's motion detected, that also sees at night in the dark, and you place those in any doorway that people can come in or out of, and you also place it where you have your assets kept. That way you always know what's going on. You might have security guards. If you're a big enough company, you'll see those. You might even see man traps if you work for the government or any of their entities or any big security contractors. You'll see a man trap. A man trap's really simple. You present yourself at a door. They buzz it. The door opens. You walk in. It closes, and now you're trapped inside this little room. You can't leave because it's locked. You can't go in because it's locked, and you stay there until they positively identify you, who you are. If they can't identify you, you're stuck. You're not getting out. So that's why they put those in there. It's easier than having just a desk and somebody walks up to it and you say no, you can't come in, and then they just quick walk away. This way, you actually grab them. And then security training. And the security training is in this instance would be make sure that the door closes behind you when you come in. Make sure that someone else doesn't come behind you when you use your badge to get in and come in saying, "Oh, I forgot my badge today." That's called piggybacking, they call it, or tailing. And basically, all they're doing is um, pretending to be somebody that works there, and everybody's in a big rush, and they just come right in with you. And so you need to train your people to make sure everybody is using their own access card to get in and out. All right. Plus, it establishes who's in the building and who's not if something were to happen. Network assets. Okay, this is how you protect those. Patches, which will come from either the software manufacturer or hardware people. You can do patch management through SUSE, which is a Windows automated patching system. You can do it through Intune, which is also a Microsoft. Uh, um, it has a patching system in it. It does a lot of other things, but right now it's run through Office 365. And then if you can find another third-party auto update for applications. Now, sadly, when it comes to Linux, there is no, um, out of the box, ready to go patch update software that I can think of, just because there's so many dispos of Linux. I think that you can probably write some type of a program in Bash that would go out and search for those, but these are really pretty low maintenance, and but they only work on the Windows platforms. Then you also have manufacturers version updates and patches. Could be firmware, could be software, it could be BIOS updates, things like that. So how do you secure your employees? Well, securing your employees is actually, think of it as making your employees secure. So you have restricted access to the building, you have well-lit parking lots, you have a disaster recovery plan so everybody knows what to do if something happens. Sadly, we have to have active shooter plans now, and UVU has one, as do almost every company now. Other plans for catastrophic events. You have to have a first aid kit and some type of emergency plan for sudden illness or injury. Okay, you have to think of all of these things because all of these things can happen. It's none of these are out of the realm of possibility of being things that you would actually need. Now, data. So data is the king in a network. Everything we do because of data, right? We're trying to get new data. We're trying to leverage data. We use data for billing. We use data to make sure we pay our invoices on time. We use data to write paychecks. We use data to track our customers, to track what they want, to track trends, everything else. It's all about data. So, in order to secure this data, there's a few things you can do. The first is principal least privilege. So, it's usually POLP. And you need to memorize this front, back, sideways in your sleep. Principal least privilege is making sure that each employee has exactly enough privilege to do their job. No more, no less. Period. They do not have a single bit of privilege in an area that they do not need to work in or doesn't have anything to do with their job description. When you are working, you will see security audits come through, and this is something they continually bring up. How do you implement the principle of least privilege in file shares? How do you implement the principle of least privilege on your network? How do you? They always ask this. So really, one of the best ways to do it, and I'm talking here more along the lines of Active Directory, but you can do things like this in Linux as well. You can have access control via security groups. Okay, so if you took server, you should have talked about Active Directory and creating um, objects, and those objects can go into um, organizational units, and then you can use those objects to create security groups or role groups or whatever other type of access group you want. And this is an organized and easy way to do it, and it's easy to track. It's easy to make sure you have control of it. And this is another thing that they will ask you: how do you implement principal of least privilege? Well, here you go. Access to this controlled by IT admins, and then encrypting of sensitive data. That might mean encrypting uh, remote workers' laptops, their hard drives. It might mean encrypting databases that you have, all sorts of anything like that. Now, when you're sending and receiving stuff, you need to use secure protocols, okay? So I've listed a few. So I have TLS 1.2. Now, some of you have probably heard of TLS, others probably don't, but you've heard of SSL, and that's what you see on websites. You'll hear people say they need an SSL certificate so that it shows correct ownership of a website so that it can be trusted. And the reason I put TLS up here is that SSL has been deprecated because of security flaws, and TLS 1.0 and 1.1 are deprecated because they could easily be um, changed over into SSL 3.0. Okay, and then this is your secure shell, IPsec. That's IP is in Internet Protocol, um, and then SFTP, which is the Secure File Transfer Protocol that uses SSH. And you also have File Transfer Protocol Secure, which uses TLS 1.2. These are not the same things, they use different ports, but they're both versions of a file transfer protocol that are secure, because file transfer protocols aren't secure by nature. Okay, so how do you make sure that your network is hardened enough that somebody can't get in? Um, you set up a really cool firewall, you got it dialed in just right, but you forget one little thing on it and it leaves an opening and they get in, but you haven't done any other security inside your network. Well, all they did was got past the one line of your defense and then you were done. I'm a huge football fan, used to coach football. I was a defensive coach. So we're going to look at this term, defense in depth. And what you're looking at on here, if you don't know anything about sports, this is what a play in football looks like. This is how they draw it up. The yellow guys are offense, they're the bad guys. And then the black colored ones, these are the defenders, they're the good guys. Your job when you're on defense is to make sure that this team, number one, doesn't get past you and score. But number two, and more, if you want to say granular, is make sure that you keep the play in front of you. So if the ball is given to the fullback or the halfback and they come out here, your job is to move to the side and make sure that they are here in front of you and they don't get behind you. Same thing as a network. If you look at this front line of your network, if you look at that as your firewall, and then in here, these might be web proxy servers. They might be VLANs that are set up that you've secured. It might be a DMZ. Over here, these might be endpoint security ideas. In here, you might also have IDS, IPS, intrusion detection, intrusion prevention systems. And then back here, the very last defense is the stuff that you have on a work machine or your personal machine. Some kind of, antivirus, you have a firewall, things like that. So you want to make sure you do these things in depth. If you don't do them in depth, then they're gonna get in. They're gonna get in here, and once they get past your first line of defense, if you haven't really set this up back here and have really thought about it, they're gone. If you ever watch a football game, you'll see this happen. All of a sudden, a running back will break out with the ball and he's just gone, or a wide receiver standing downfield all by himself. And it's called a broken coverage or broken missed assignment. And it's the same thing with your network. If you don't have these things tightened down and everything knows what they need to be doing and every one weak link can really mess your program up. So you need to make sure that everything's functioning as a team and you have as many layers as you can have while still maintaining your CIA triangle confidentiality, integrity, and accessibility. I can secure a network by unplugging it from the wall, okay? But now that completely blows the accessibility part because you can't access it because I've unplugged it. So you have to take things, you have to allow for some things. So if you're looking at, let's talk about it in sense of an onion. Some of you this visual may work better for you.
If you look at this very center of an onion, this is your data, okay? This is what you're protecting. And if you notice an onion, it has layers. Here's one, there's another one, another, and then another before you ever get to the center or your data. This is your network, okay? This could be your firewall, okay? This could be your locked front door. This could be um, any number of things. Right here, this might be IDS, IPS. This might be further restricted access into the server room. This might be endpoint security or a web proxy server or a proxy server of another kind. This might be your access control list, or it could be your Active Directory principal least privilege that you have in there for access. These are procedures that you have to make sure that people still have the access they're supposed to have and don't have access overreach. Okay, all coming right down to protecting just this one thing, and that's your data. That's another football one. Never mind. Now what? So at this point, most IT admins are exactly this. They're overwhelmed, they're unsupported, overworked, you get confused, information overload, and then you ask yourself, who can you trust? Okay. And the key for this, in my opinion, is to find a mentor within the industry. Everybody that I know that works in the industry, including myself, we have mentors. People that have been in the industry longer and know more than you do. When we're feeling any of these things, we contact them and we say, I have this issue. Have you ever seen it before? We use groups on the web, subreddits. We use those. We use other message boards to put our questions out there for other people in our community to help us with answers. And that's where we go. But the other thing is, you can also trust yourself. All right. Remember that you are learning a lot in this program, and that learning is going to equal trust as you get into the market. The other thing that you're getting, because you're going to college and you're getting an education, you've been through this COVID-19 thing where everything got turned upside down. You know what it feels like to be overwhelmed and feel unsupported, overworked, and confused, and definitely information overload. So think back, how have you handled these things at your with your university experience? Because I mean, all of you are getting close to graduating, so you've done it somehow. Think about that. And then the last thing I want to talk about is this. This is the aggregation of marginal gains. Now everybody's probably saying, aggravated what? I'm confused. Snoop's confused, so let's help him out. So, the aggregation of marginal gains. So if we define this, aggregation is the gathering of something, and as you gather it, it continues to grow because you keep putting it together, more things together. All right. Marginal meaning almost difficult to measure, and may seem unimportant, and gains would be improvement. So now Snoop's not confused. I don't think he's going to remember it for very long with the size of that blunt, but whatever. All right. So here you go. Blue line and orange line. If you improve anything, and in this
In this context, let's talk about improving our knowledge of network security and network management. If you improve that 1% per day, now 1% is nothing, right? It's nothing. It's you almost can't measure it, right? It's that small. But after 52 days, you have increased your knowledge from where you're at now by 70%. There's a big mathematical formula that went into this. We don't want to talk about that. You see how that works? You're starting to see growth. That growth is can it it goes up, it's going up, and then it takes off. Now, if you have a negative 1%, so a decrease, and you say, well, I'm not going to decrease. Well, sadly, in life, if you are not moving forward, you're moving backwards. There is no status quo, there is no standing still. General Patton, famous Army officer in World War II, talked about that you are either advancing or retreating. There is no in between. If you're simply sitting in a foxhole, you are you are retreating because the enemy will keep coming closer to you and you're losing ground. Same thing happens here. If you are not every day trying to learn a little something new, then you are decreasing and going backwards. And you can see the same time period, you actually lose. Well, you come back up a little bit, but you lose 60% of what you knew, which means you forget it. Now, we know that's true because when this lecture finishes, most of you will not remember what we started with unless you go back and look at it. So, try this little improvement thing. Trust yourself. More importantly, find a mentor. And UVU is starting a new program where um, you can sign up, and I'll get you guys the link for it. But it's through the Young Alumni Association. And what it is you can put your resume up there and put a message out that you're looking for a mentor in this area, and other UVU grads will come in and mentor you. And then as you get better at this, you can mentor other people, which is what you need to do. I'll get you guys the link for that, and I'll post it up in the announcements. Anyway, that's it for this lecture. We have one more lecture that we're going to be doing in this module, and that's about risk management, and it won't be nearly this long. But thank you for listening and taking your time. I hope you learned something. Watch this as many times as you need to, and have a great rest of your day.